Welcome back. Earlier this hour, we talked about some of the issues surrounding the pandemic and the immense challenges facing Americans. And that topic plays into this next segment as well. The National Urban League is out with its 2021 State of Black America report. The data shows higher rates of unemployment, lower household incomes, and the crushing burden of housing costs left Black Americans uniquely vulnerable to COVID-19's economic fallout. Joining us now, President and CEO of the National Urban League, Marc Morial. Also with us, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton, and professor of the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, MSNBC contributor Victoria DeFrancesco Soto. Marc, I want to start with the lead lines out of this report. Especially pertaining to COVID. The housing crisis really screams out to me, but let's start with actual COVID numbers and then how Black Americans are faring in this report.
Thank you. Good morning, Mika, and good to be with you. We focus in this report not only on what the status of the Black America is, but on what we need to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive America. So this report talks about the direction we need to take. But let's contextualize it this way. If you combine the Great Recession and COVID and resulting economic difficulties, Black America has taken a tremendous hit in the first 20 years of the 21st century when it comes to wealth, income, and especially now coming out of COVID, the disparities that were exposed when it comes to the health of Black Americans. So we come out of this 2020 with tremendous challenges. We know the challenges of voting, the challenges of policing, but the economic challenges are just a start. The challenges with respect to health are just as stark. In this report, we try to focus on what we can do, what policies, what actions, what solutions are available.
Mr. Mayor, it's Willie Geist. Great to have you on this morning. You were the two-term mayor of the great city of New Orleans. I'm curious for your view and how it fits into this report of this tension we're seeing right now on the real need and the desire for police reform, but also rising crime in our major cities just over the last year. How do you see that playing out, and what are some of the solutions you're looking at?
You know, Willie, there has to be balance between police reform and justice on one hand and public safety. It would be a tragic mistake if, facing the gun violence spike we've seen, that we went back to what took place in the 1980s and 90s. Over-policing, mass incarceration, stop and frisk. No, we need to deal with the underlying causes of gun violence, easy access to guns. We need to take this opportunity now that cities have money from the American Rescue Plan and put young people to work in communities. Let's raise up the largest youth jobs and young adult job initiative in American history. That is something we can do, but you have to have trust between police and communities if you're going to prevent gun violence, and you've got to get off the seat and change the law so that easy access to guns is not the reality across America. So we've got to balance all of these things, Willie. The old solutions will not work. So this is a time for us to speak up and not allow the polarization that occurred in the 1980s and 1990s to dominate the discussion. It is important to do both. And you hear the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, Eric Adams, speaking about something I learned when I was mayor. You have to balance. You put investments in summer jobs, in summer camps, but then we also reform policing to a community policing model. It's got to be balanced. You've got to do both. And you've got to recognize that without doing both, you're going to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Rev, Marc brings up the name Eric Adams. You and I were just talking about him, the Democratic nominee and likely next mayor of New York City. Fascinating that in this era of marches and activism about police violence and the need for change and police reform, that New York City just elected a former New York City police officer perhaps to be its next mayor?
But Eric comes with a balanced resume. He's a former New York City policeman, but he's also one of the founding members of National Action Network 30 years ago when I started it. So he has been involved on both activism and police reform, the balance that we're talking about. Because I think people forget that the victims of crime in the black community are blacks. So we want to see crime down as much as we want police crime. I think what many Americans do not realize is that it is the height of being frightened when you are in an area that has high crime and you're afraid to call the police because you don't know how they're going to behave when they get there, which is why you need this balance. But Mark, let me address this to you, the question, because you and I have worked together the last decade and a half that you've headed the Urban League. And one of the things that we've looked at is the inequality, whether it be health care, whether it be education, things that you come out with your annual report today. And as we met with President Biden last week around voting, I think that part of the challenge that I want you to address is how to get government to understand, since there is this inequality, there must be a disproportionate investment in repairing the damage. You can't give us equal resources and equal attention when we're in an unequal situation.
Greg, you just defined what equity is. And equity means to do what is necessary to bring us to equal. And government played a role in these disparities where hospitals were located, not in black communities, redlining when it came to housing, discrimination in bank loans, lack of access to colleges and universities. Government policies were a contributing factor to the inequity or the inequality we face. So government has a role and a responsibility to do more, to do the extra, to undo these structural, if you will, inequities that we see. And I think you define it well, that they've got to do more. Now, President Biden's budget plan and his infrastructure plan, I believe, hold promise as an investment, the beginning of a reverse of what we've seen all too often, for the most part, with the exception of the American Recovery Plan over the last 20 years, which is a systematic continuation of the policies of disinvestment in African-American communities and Latino communities, in urban communities, big and small. And that's why we've got this wide wealth gap. We've got this wide, we've got Americans who once considered themselves even middle class, having a hard time paying their mortgage, paying their rent, and basically keeping their head above water. So this is an emergency situation for the nation.
So I'm looking at that graph that was just up about lack of access, computer access. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto from the great University of Texas as a professor. I know this is profoundly of interest to you. And I know you have a question for Mark about just access overall to education as it pertains to black communities.
I do. Thanks, Mika. And Mark, I really appreciated how you highlighted the fact that what we are seeing in our communities of color is layered on top of the Great Recession, which set our communities back so far, and it took us so long to recover. And then looking at the latest jobs numbers, right, we saw that the U.S. as a whole is at 5.96%. But when you look at black folk, we're looking at over 9% unemployment. So can you talk to me about what the plan is to regain employment, not just in the short term, trying to get back some of those jobs, which we know are low quality jobs, but how do we set our communities of color on track for medium to long term gain? So we're not just surviving, but we're thriving. What are the tools that we need and that we need to press our government officials to move forward?
So thank you for the question. There's a part of this where I embrace what is fairly conventional thinking. That is that we need to invest more in education and training targeted at communities of color, for better paying jobs in technology, jobs in construction, jobs in careers that have increasing, if you will, levels of income and levels of wages. But in addition to that, corporate America and employers have to look themselves in the mirror and say, we have engaged in systemic discrimination for the most part. You look at the mid-level and higher up jobs in many, many industries, they're not diverse at all. So we've got work to do. So I want to see a real commitment from those who hire to do a more aggressive and assertive job in recruiting and hiring African Americans and other people of color. So that's number two. I think number three is the president's leadership and the leadership of the government in highlighting racial injustice and in holding up racial justice as one of President Biden's operating pillars. I think the moral power, but also the enforcement powers of the EEOC and the Department of Justice have to be in play to purge this nation of this longstanding racism. So there's much we can do. And the idea is, do we have the will to do it?